The sun was just beginning to rise over the city, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was a typical Tuesday morning, and the subway station buzzed with activity. People hurried along the platform, their footsteps echoing against the tiled walls. Some clutched cups of steaming coffee, while others juggled bags and briefcases as they prepared for another busy day. Among the crowd stood Mia, a 16-year-old girl wearing oversized headphones and scrolling through her phone. She had woken up late that morning, so she didn't have time to eat breakfast. Instead, she grabbed a granola bar from the kitchen counter before rushing out the door. Mia wasn't paying much attention to her surroundings. Her earbuds were playing her favorite playlist, and she hummed softly under her breath as she waited for the train. When it finally arrived, she stepped inside, finding a spot near the doors where she could lean against the railing. Around her, the car filled quickly with passengers, students heading to school, office workers glued to their laptops, and tourists snapping photos of the colorful graffiti on the tunnel walls. Everyone seemed absorbed in their own worlds, disconnected from one another despite being crammed into such close quarters. At the far end of the car, a man sat quietly by himself. He wore a dark hoodie pulled low over his face, blending seamlessly into the sea of commuters. His broad shoulders and muscular build hinted at someone who spent hours in the gym, but no one paid him any mind. To most people, he looked like an ordinary traveler trying to get somewhere. In reality, this was Dwayne Johnson, better known to millions as The Rock. After finishing a film shoot in the city the previous week, he had decided to take public transportation instead of calling a private car. He enjoyed observing everyday life when he wasn't in the spotlight. It reminded him of simpler times before fame took over. For now, Dwayne kept his head down, occasionally glancing up to watch the passing advertisements flash by outside the windows. A young boy sitting nearby nudged his mother and whispered something about how the man in the hoodie looked familiar. The mother shushed him gently, not wanting to cause a scene. But curiosity got the better of the child, and after a few moments, he approached Dwayne cautiously. "Excuse me," the boy said timidly, holding out a small notebook and pen. Are you the asterisk Dwayne Johnson?" Dwayne smiled warmly, recognizing the awe in the boy's voice. "Yeah, buddy, that's me," he replied, taking the items offered to him. He signed his name with a flourish and handed them back. "What's your name?" "Tyler," the boy exclaimed, beaming with excitement. "Well, Tyler, always remember to work hard and stay kind, okay? You got this." The boy nodded eagerly before running back to his mom, who gave Dwayne a grateful smile. For a brief moment, the atmosphere in the subway car shifted as several heads turned toward him. However, once the initial surprise faded, the passengers returned to their routines, leaving Dwayne alone again. Unbeknownst to everyone, danger lurked nearby. Standing just a few feet away from Mia was Marcus, a man with sharp features and restless energy. His hands twitched nervously at his sides, and his eyes darted around the car as if searching for something or someone. Marcus had recently been released from prison after serving 5 years for robbery. Now, desperate and angry, he was looking for a way to make quick cash. As the train rattled through the underground tunnels, he locked his gaze onto Mia. She hadn't noticed him yet, too engrossed in her phone to sense the threat looming behind her. Marcus edged closer, his heart pounding in anticipation. He knew he had to act fast. The next stop was only minutes away. With each passing second, his resolve hardened. This crowded subway car would provide the perfect cover for what he planned to do next. Meanwhile, Dwayne sensed something was off. Years of training in wrestling and martial arts had honed his instincts, making him hyper-aware of his environment. He glanced around the car, his eyes narrowing slightly as they landed on Marcus. Something about the man's demeanor set off alarm bells in Dwayne's mind. Still, he remained seated, waiting to see what would happen next. The train screeched as it approached the next station, its brakes squealing loudly. Passengers began gathering their belongings, preparing to disembark. Mia adjusted her backpack, still oblivious to the danger creeping closer. And then, without warning, Marcus made his move. Continued in Part 2. As the train slowed to a halt at the station, Marcus acted quickly. He reached out and grabbed Mia by the arm, yanking her toward him with surprising force. Her phone slipped from her hand and clattered onto the floor, breaking the tense silence in the car. Startled, Mia let out a sharp gasp, her wide eyes locking onto Marcus's face. His grip was tight, almost painful, as he pulled her closer to him. "Don't scream," Marcus hissed under his breath, his voice low but menacing. "Do exactly what I say, or you'll regret it." Mia froze, fear rooting her to the spot. She tried to pull away, but Marcus only tightened his hold, twisting her arm slightly to make his point clear. Tears welled up in her eyes as panic began to take over. The music from her earbuds had stopped playing, leaving her painfully aware of every sound around her. The creak of the train doors opening, the muffled whispers of other passengers, and the heavy breathing of the man who now controlled her fate. The rest of the subway car seemed to freeze along with Mia. Some passengers turned their heads, pretending not to notice what was happening. Others stared openly, unsure whether they should intervene or stay out of harm's way. A businessman near the front fumbled with his phone, trying to dial emergency services without drawing attention to himself. An elderly woman clutched her purse tightly, murmuring prayers under her breath. Fear rippled through the crowd like a wave, paralyzing everyone except one man. Dwayne Johnson had been watching quietly from his seat, his instincts screaming that something was wrong. Now, seeing Marcus grab Mia, he felt a surge of anger mixed with determination. Though he wanted nothing more than to leap into action immediately, he forced himself to stay calm. Years of experience in high-pressure situations taught him that rushing in blindly could make things worse. Instead, he observed carefully, assessing the layout of the car and calculating the best way to neutralize the threat without putting Mia in further danger. Marcus, meanwhile, was focused solely on his plan. With Mia firmly in his grasp, he began backing toward the exit doors, dragging her along with him. His movements were deliberate, betraying none of the nervousness he felt inside. He knew time was running out. If he didn't act fast, someone might summon the courage to stop him. As the doors slid open, allowing passengers to step off, Marcus prepared to make his escape. "Stay back," he barked at the other commuters, his voice loud enough to echo through the car. "This doesn't concern any of you." Most people obeyed, stepping aside to avoid confrontation. But Dwayne remained seated, his piercing gaze fixed on Marcus. Slowly, he rose to his feet, towering over nearly everyone else in the car. For a moment, no one noticed him, not even Marcus, who was too busy glaring at the frightened passengers. When Dwayne finally moved, however, all eyes turned to him. He walked toward Marcus with steady, deliberate steps, his presence commanding attention. The hoodie he wore earlier was now draped over his shoulder, revealing his muscular frame beneath a plain black t-shirt. Every movement radiated confidence and authority, making it impossible to ignore him. Passengers exchanged glances, some whispering excitedly as they realized who this stranger was. Marcus finally noticed Dwayne approaching and stiffened, his grip on Mia tightening instinctively. "Back off," he shouted, his voice cracking slightly. "This is none of your business." Dwayne stopped a few feet away, his expression calm but firm. "Let her go," he said, his deep voice cutting through the tension like a knife. There was no trace of aggression in his tone, just an unwavering resolve that made Marcus hesitate. For a split second, Marcus considered complying. Something about the way Dwayne stood there, unflinching and composed, sent a chill down his spine. But pride and desperation kept him from backing down. "I'm warning you," Marcus growled, pulling Mia even closer. "Stay out of this." Dwayne didn't flinch. He took another step forward, closing the gap between them. "I won't ask again," he said simply, his words carrying the weight of someone who meant every syllable. The atmosphere in the subway car grew heavier with each passing second. Passengers held their breath, unsure whether they were about to witness a heroic rescue or a violent confrontation. Marcus glanced around nervously, realizing for the first time that he was outnumbered, but also knowing that no one else dared to challenge him. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the standoff escalated into action. Marcus's mind raced as he stared at Dwayne, his confidence wavering under the weight of the man's imposing presence. For years, Marcus had relied on intimidation to get what he wanted, his size and aggression usually enough to make people back down. But this time was different. Standing before him wasn't just another commuter. It was someone who exuded strength and control without even trying. Every fiber of Marcus's being told him to run, but pride and desperation kept him rooted in place. Dwayne took another step forward, his movements deliberate and unhurried. He didn't need to rush. He knew that any sudden action could escalate the situation and put Mia in greater danger. His priority was clear: ensure her safety above all else. Years of training in wrestling and martial arts had taught him how to assess threats quickly and act decisively when necessary. Right now, his focus was entirely on Marcus, analyzing every twitch of his hand, every shift in his stance. "You don't want to do this," Dwayne said calmly, his deep voice resonating through the subway car. "Let her go, and we can end this peacefully." His tone was firm yet measured, offering a lifeline to Marcus if he chose to take it. To the other passengers, it sounded less like a threat and more like an invitation to step away from disaster. But Marcus didn't see it that way. To him, these words felt like mockery, a challenge disguised as kindness. His grip on Mia tightened even further, causing her to whimper in pain. "I said stay out of this," Marcus snapped, his voice shaking with frustration. He glanced toward the open doors of the train, calculating whether he could still make his escape. The platform outside was nearly empty now, save for a few stragglers hurrying toward the stairs. If he could just get past this giant standing in his way, maybe, just maybe, he could disappear into the crowd. But Dwayne wasn't about to let that happen. With each passing second, his body language shifted subtly, signaling his readiness to act. His feet were planted firmly apart, his weight evenly distributed. His hands hung loosely at his sides, relaxed but prepared to move at a moment's notice. Though he appeared calm on the surface, there was an unmistakable intensity in his eyes. A quiet promise that he wouldn't hesitate to intervene if needed. "Listen to me," Dwayne continued, his voice unwavering. "This isn't going to end well for you if you keep going down this path. Let her go, and walk away while you still can." For a brief moment, doubt flickered across Marcus's face. Perhaps he realized the futility of his situation, or maybe he simply couldn't think of another option. Whatever the reason, his resolve faltered slightly, giving Dwayne the opening he needed. In one fluid motion, Dwayne closed the remaining distance between them. His movements were so fast that Marcus barely had time to react. With precision honed by years of practice, Dwayne grabbed Marcus's wrist, the same arm holding Mia, and applied pressure to a sensitive point. It wasn't enough to cause serious harm, but it was enough to force Marcus to release his grip. Mia stumbled forward, free at last, and collapsed into the arms of a nearby passenger who pulled her to safety. Gasps erupted throughout the car as everyone realized what had just happened. Some cheered instinctively, while others covered their mouths in shock. Marcus staggered backward, clutching his wrist and staring at Dwayne in disbelief. "What are you, some kind of freak?" Marcus spat, trying to regain his composure. But his bravado was gone, replaced by fear and uncertainty. Dwayne didn't respond. Instead, he advanced again, his expression unchanged. This wasn't about revenge or punishment. It was about ensuring that no one else got hurt. As Marcus backed up against the wall, trapped between Dwayne and the train doors, it became painfully clear that resistance was futile. The other passengers watched in awe as Dwayne effortlessly disarmed Marcus, pinning him against the wall with minimal effort. Despite his size and power, Dwayne handled the situation with remarkable restraint, avoiding unnecessary violence. His actions spoke volumes about his character, proving that true strength lies not in domination but in protecting those who cannot protect themselves. By the time the train reached the next station, Marcus was completely subdued. Dwayne held him firmly in place, waiting for the authorities to arrive. Meanwhile, Mia sat trembling on a nearby bench, surrounded by concerned passengers who offered her water and reassurance. As the sound of approaching sirens filled the air, Dwayne finally allowed himself a small sigh of relief. The immediate danger had passed, but he knew there was still work to be done. The wail of police sirens grew louder as the subway train came to a stop at the next station. Officers rushed onto the platform, their boots echoing loudly against the tiled floor. Passengers parted to make way for them, some pointing toward the car where Dwayne stood with Marcus pinned against the wall. Despite being subdued, Marcus still struggled weakly, his face flushed with anger and humiliation. "Stay back," he shouted again, though his voice lacked conviction this time. It was clear that he had no options left, no escape routes, no allies, nothing but the cold reality of his predicament. Dwayne didn't say a word. He simply held Marcus in place, his grip firm but controlled. There was no malice in his expression, only determination. To him, This wasn't personal. It was about protecting an innocent girl and ensuring justice was served. As the officers entered the car, one of them, a tall woman with short brown hair, spoke up immediately. "What's going on here?" she asked, her hand resting on the holster of her gun. "This man attempted to abduct a teenage girl," Dwayne replied calmly, nodding toward Mia, who sat nearby under the care of other passengers. "I intervened before he could harm her further." The officer turned her attention to Marcus, who glared back defiantly despite his obvious disadvantage. "Is that true?" she demanded, stepping closer. Marcus opened his mouth to protest but quickly realized there was no point denying it. Everyone in the car had witnessed what happened, including several people recording videos on their phones. Instead, he muttered something unintelligible under his breath, refusing to meet anyone's gaze. "You grabbed her right in front of us," said a middle-aged man standing nearby, gesturing toward Mia. "If it weren't for, well, *him*. They pointed at Dwayne. "Who knows what might have happened?" The officer nodded, taking note of the situation. She signaled to her partner, who moved forward to handcuff Marcus. As they secured him, another officer approached Mia, speaking softly to calm her down while asking for details about the incident. Meanwhile, the crowd began to disperse slightly, though many remained transfixed by the scene unfolding before them. Once Marcus was fully restrained, the lead officer turned back to Dwayne. "Thank you for your help," she said sincerely. "Can I get your name for the report?" Dwayne hesitated for a moment, then shrugged. "Just call me Dwayne," he replied with a small smile. The officer raised an eyebrow, clearly not recognizing him, but someone else did. A young woman holding her phone suddenly gasped audibly. "Wait, isn't that The Rock?" she exclaimed, loud enough for everyone to hear. A murmur rippled through the remaining passengers as heads turned once again to look at Dwayne. Some whispered excitedly among themselves, while others pulled out their phones to snap photos or record videos. For a few chaotic moments, the atmosphere shifted from tension to awe. One teenager boldly stepped forward. "Oh my gosh, that is you," he said, grinning ear to ear. "Can I take a picture, please?" Dwayne chuckled softly, shaking his head in amusement. "Not right now, buddy," he replied kindly. "Let's focus on making sure this guy," he nodded toward Marcus, "doesn't hurt anyone else." Impressed by his humility, the officer smiled approvingly. "Well, Mr. Johnson, we'll handle things from here. Thanks again for stepping in. You probably saved that girl's life." As the officers escorted Marcus off the train, his protests fading into the distance, the mood inside the car began to lighten. People clapped and cheered, some even chanting, "Rock, rock," as if they were at a wrestling match. Dwayne waved politely, clearly uncomfortable with the attention but unwilling to dampen the spirits of those around him. Mia watched the scene unfold with wide eyes, still processing everything that had happened. When Dwayne approached her, she looked up at him timidly, her hands trembling as she clutched a bottle of water given to her by another passenger. "Are you okay?" Dwayne asked gently, kneeling down to her level so he wouldn't seem intimidating. She nodded slowly, tears welling up in her eyes. Thank you," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. You stopped him." Dwayne gave her a reassuring smile, his trademark charm shining through. "You're safe now," he told her. "That's all that matters." Her mother arrived moments later, having been contacted by a good Samaritan who found her number in Mia's phone. Overwhelmed with relief, she hugged her daughter tightly, thanking Dwayne profusely between sobs. "I can't believe you were here," she said, shaking her head in disbelief. "We owe you everything." Dwayne shook his head modestly. Anyone would have done the same, he insisted. But deep down, he knew that wasn't entirely true. By the time the police had taken Marcus away, the subway car was buzzing with energy. Passengers who had been frozen in fear just moments earlier now erupted into applause and cheers. Some even chanted "Rock, rock," as if they were at a live wrestling event rather than a crowded train. Dwayne stood quietly amidst the chaos, his towering frame still commanding attention despite his attempts to blend into the background. He waved politely, offering nods of gratitude to those who praised him, but his focus remained on Mia. The teenager sat nearby, wrapped in her mother's arms, visibly shaken but safe. Her tear-streaked face spoke volumes about the trauma she'd endured, but there was also a flicker of relief, a sense that she had narrowly escaped something far worse. Dwayne knelt beside them once again, his presence calming yet powerful. "You're going to be okay," he said softly, his voice steady and reassuring. "It's over now." Mia nodded weakly, her lips trembling as she tried to form words. Finally, she managed to whisper, "Thank you for saving me." Her mother gripped Dwayne's hand tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks. "We'll never forget this," she said earnestly. "You saved my daughter's life. How can we ever repay you?" Dwayne smiled warmly, shaking his head. "There's no need for that," he replied. "Just take care of each other, all right? That's all the thanks I need." His humility only deepened the admiration people felt for him. Strangers gathered around, eager to shake his hand or thank him personally. A young boy tugged at his mother's sleeve, asking if he could meet the real-life superhero. Others recorded videos, capturing snippets of the moment to share online. Social media was already ablaze with posts about the incident, hashtags like #TheRealLifeRock trending within minutes. Despite the growing commotion, Dwayne handled it all with grace. He posed for a few quick photos when asked, signed autographs for excited fans, and offered words of encouragement to anyone who approached him. But he made it clear that his priority wasn't fame. It was ensuring that Mia and her family felt supported after such a harrowing experience. Meanwhile, reporters began arriving at the station, drawn by the viral chatter spreading across platforms. Camera crews pushed through the crowd, microphones extended as they sought sound bites from witnesses. One journalist spotted Dwayne and rushed toward him, thrusting a microphone into his face. "Mr. Johnson, can you tell us what happened here today?" the reporter asked eagerly. Dwayne hesitated, glancing back at Mia and her mother. They were still seated nearby, speaking with paramedics who had arrived to check on Mia's condition. He didn't want to overshadow their story or turn the spotlight onto himself. "It's simple," he said finally, keeping his response brief. "A young girl was in trouble, and I did what anyone should do. I stepped in to help. The real heroes are the officers who responded quickly, and the people here who stayed calm under pressure." His answer earned murmurs of approval from the crowd, though many found it hard to believe that someone so famous could remain so humble. Reporters pressed him with more questions, but Dwayne politely declined further comment. Instead, he turned his attention back to Mia, making sure she was comfortable before quietly slipping away. As he walked toward the exit, the crowd parted respectfully, clapping and cheering one last time. Dwayne raised a hand in acknowledgement, flashing his trademark smile before disappearing into the throng of commuters outside. Back inside the subway car, the aftermath of the incident continued to unfold. Paramedics completed their assessment of Mia, assuring her mother that she was physically unharmed, but recommending counseling to help process the emotional impact. Officers collected statements from witnesses, piecing together the sequence of events while thanking everyone for their cooperation. News of Marcus's arrest spread quickly. Investigators discovered that he had recently been released from prison after serving time for robbery and assault. His decision to target Mia on the subway was part of a desperate attempt to extort money from her family, a plan thwarted entirely by Dwayne's intervention. For Mia, the nightmare was over, but its scars would linger. As she stepped off the train with her mother, surrounded by well-wishers and law enforcement officials, she couldn't stop thinking about the man who had saved her. To her, Dwayne wasn't just a celebrity, he was a guardian angel who had appeared out of nowhere when she needed him most. And though Dwayne had vanished into the city streets, his actions left an indelible mark, not just on Mia and her family, but on everyone who witnessed the extraordinary events of that morning. Continued in Part 6. By mid-afternoon, the story of what happened on the subway had gone viral. Social media platforms were flooded with videos, photos, and eyewitness accounts of Dwayne Johnson's heroic intervention. News outlets picked up the story within hours, running headlines like "The Rock Saves Teenager from Abduction" and "Real-Life Heroics." How Dwayne Johnson stepped in. Clips of the incident, captured by passengers' phones, circulated widely, showing Marcus being subdued and Mia being comforted by her rescuer. The world couldn't get enough of it. For Mia and her family, however, the day was far from celebratory. They spent hours at the police station giving statements and answering questions about the attack. Every detail was crucial to building a case against Marcus, who now faced multiple charges, including attempted kidnapping and assault. While grateful for the outcome, Mia struggled to shake off the fear that lingered in her mind. Her hands trembled as she recounted the moment Marcus grabbed her, and her voice cracked when she described how helpless she felt before Dwayne intervened. Her mother stayed by her side throughout the ordeal, holding her hand tightly and offering words of reassurance. "You're safe now," she repeated softly whenever Mia seemed overwhelmed. Still, both knew that recovering from such an experience would take time. That evening, they returned home exhausted but relieved, vowing to seek counseling to help Mia heal emotionally. Meanwhile, Dwayne tried to return to his normal routine, though doing so proved difficult. Messages poured into his social media accounts from fans around the globe, praising him for his bravery and humility. Some shared personal stories of times they wished they'd had the courage to step in during moments of danger, while others simply thanked him for reminding them that even celebrities are human beings capable of extraordinary kindness. Despite the outpouring of support, Dwayne avoided seeking attention for himself. He declined interviews with major networks, redirecting focus to Mia and her family instead. In a brief statement posted online, he wrote, "Today reminded me of something important. We all have the power to make a difference. What happened on that train wasn't about me. It was about standing up for someone who needed help. I'm just glad I could be there for Mia and her family. Let's keep lifting each other up and looking out for one another." His words resonated deeply, sparking conversations about bystander intervention and community responsibility. Local leaders praised Dwayne not only for his actions but also for using his platform to inspire positive change. Schools and organizations began organizing workshops on self-defense and safety awareness, encouraging people to speak up when they see wrongdoing. As days passed, Mia slowly started to regain her confidence. She received messages of encouragement from strangers worldwide, many of whom expressed admiration for her resilience. One letter, written by a young girl from another country, stood out to her. It read, "Dear Mia, I saw what happened to you on the news, and I want you to know that you're stronger than you think. You survived something really scary, and because of heroes like Dwayne, we see that good people exist in the world. Keep fighting, and never forget how brave you are." Reading those words brought tears to Mia's eyes, not tears of sadness, but of gratitude. For the first time since the incident, she allowed herself to feel hopeful about the future. Marcus, meanwhile, remained behind bars, awaiting trial. His lawyer argued that he acted out of desperation due to financial struggles following his release from prison, but prosecutors countered that his actions demonstrated a pattern of violence and disregard for others' safety. Public opinion leaned heavily against him, with many calling for stricter penalties for repeat offenders. For Dwayne, life eventually settled back into its usual rhythm. He resumed filming his next project, keeping a low profile despite the lingering buzz surrounding the subway incident. Yet the memory of that morning stayed with him, reinforcing his belief in the importance of stepping up when others are in need. One night, as he sat alone in his hotel room scrolling through messages from fans, he paused on a video sent by Mia's family. In it, Mia held up a handmade poster that read, "Thank you for being my hero." She smiled shyly at the camera before waving goodbye. Dwayne chuckled softly, touched by the gesture. Though he didn't consider himself a hero, he understood the impact small acts of courage could have on someone's life. As he turned off his phone and prepared for bed, he reflected on the day's events with quiet satisfaction. Sometimes, heroes don't wear capes, they ride subways. The story of Dwayne Johnson's subway heroics continued to inspire people long after the initial incident faded from the headlines. For Mia, life began to feel a little more normal as weeks turned into months. With therapy and support from her family, she slowly regained her confidence. She even started journaling about her experience, pouring her thoughts onto paper as a way to process everything that had happened. Writing became therapeutic for her, and eventually, she decided to share some of her reflections online. Her first post went live on a popular blog dedicated to survivor stories. Titled How a Stranger Saved My Life it detailed not only the terrifying moments on the subway, but also the kindness and bravery of the man who stepped in when no one else could or would. Mia wrote candidly about how scared she felt during the attack and how Dwayne's calm demeanor gave her hope when all seemed lost. "I didn't know who he was at first," she wrote. "But when I saw him stand up to that man, I realized I wasn't alone anymore. He reminded me that there are still good people in this world, people willing to risk their own safety to protect others." The response to her post was overwhelming. Thousands of readers left comments praising Mia's courage and thanking her for sharing her story. Many expressed admiration for Dwayne, calling him a real-life superhero. Others shared their own experiences of being helped by strangers, creating a ripple effect of gratitude and inspiration across the internet. Inspired by the positive feedback, Mia began volunteering with organizations focused on youth empowerment and self-defense education. She wanted to use her experience to help others feel safer and more prepared in dangerous situations. At workshops, she spoke openly about what happened to her, emphasizing the importance of staying alert and trusting your instincts. Her words resonated deeply with participants, especially young women who often felt vulnerable in public spaces. Dwayne, too, noticed the impact of his actions beyond the immediate rescue. During appearances for his upcoming projects, fans frequently approached him to express their appreciation, not just for saving Mia, but for setting an example of what true strength looks like. One fan told him how the incident inspired them to enroll in a self-defense class. Another shared how they now felt braver about stepping in if they witnessed wrongdoing. Moved by these stories, Dwayne partnered with several nonprofit organizations to promote awareness around personal safety and bystander intervention. Together, they launched campaigns encouraging people to take action when they see someone in trouble. In interviews, he emphasized that heroism isn't reserved for celebrities or extraordinary individuals. It's something anyone can practice in their daily lives. "You don't need superhuman strength or fame to make a difference," he said during one talk show appearance. "All you need is the willingness to care about someone else's well-being. Sometimes just showing up and saying, 'I'm here for you,' can change everything." Marcus's trial concluded several months later, resulting in a guilty verdict. The judge sentenced him to additional prison time, citing his history of violent behavior and the trauma he inflicted on Mia. While justice was served, the case sparked broader discussions about rehabilitation programs for former inmates and addressing the root causes of crime. Community leaders argued that providing better resources and opportunities could prevent similar incidents in the future. For Mia, seeing Marcus convicted brought a sense of closure, though she knew healing would be an ongoing process. She continued focusing on her studies and her volunteer work, finding purpose in helping others navigate challenges like hers. Her mother marveled at her resilience, proud of the strong, compassionate young woman she was becoming. As for Dwayne, the subway incident remained a defining moment in his life, not because of the attention it brought him, but because it reinforced his belief in humanity's capacity for good. He carried that lesson with him wherever he went, using his platform to amplify messages of kindness, courage, and unity. In quiet moments, he reflected on the day he saved Mia. It wasn't his size or fame that mattered most. It was the simple act of choosing to step forward when someone needed help. And though he returned to his busy schedule of filming and traveling, he never forgot the girl on the subway whose life intersected with his in such a profound way. Sometimes, heroes don't wear capes. They blend into crowds, ride subways, and remind us that even the smallest acts of courage can leave lasting ripples of change. Continued in Part 8, life eventually returned to its usual rhythm for everyone involved, though the events of that fateful morning on the subway left an indelible mark. For Dwayne Johnson, the incident became a quiet reminder of why he valued humility and service above all else. While fans around the world continued to praise him as a real-life hero, he carried the memory with a sense of gratitude rather than pride. To him, it wasn't about being extraordinary. It was about doing what anyone should do, standing up for someone in need. He resumed his work on set, throwing himself into grueling hours of filming while keeping a low profile off-camera. Yet, even in his busy schedule, he found time to reflect on the impact of his actions. During breaks between scenes, he often thought about Mia and her family, wondering how they were coping. Occasionally, he'd scroll through social media updates from Mia's blog posts or news articles highlighting her advocacy efforts. Each update brought a smile to his face, knowing that she had turned a terrifying experience into something positive, a beacon of hope for others facing similar challenges. One evening, after wrapping up a long day of shooting, Dwayne received a package at his hotel room. Inside was a small box containing a framed photo of Mia holding the handmade poster she had shown him earlier. Asterisk, thank you for being my hero. Asterisk, alongside it was a handwritten letter from Mia herself. Asterisk, dear Mr. Johnson. Asterisk, the note began. Asterisk, I can't thank you enough for everything you did for me that day. You saved my life, but more importantly, you gave me back my courage. Because of you, I've learned to face my fears and help others who might feel scared too. Please know that your kindness has changed my life forever. Thank you for reminding me, and everyone, that heroes are real. Asterisk. Dwayne read the letter several times, touched by Mia's heartfelt words. He carefully placed the framed photo on his bedside table, where it would serve as a daily reminder of the difference one person could make. For Mia, life moved forward with newfound purpose. She graduated high school at the top of her class, earning recognition not only for her academic achievements, but also for her community activism. Her volunteer work with youth empowerment programs inspired countless young people to take charge of their own safety and support one another. She became a role model, not because she sought fame, but because her resilience spoke louder than any title ever could. Her mother watched proudly as Mia blossomed into a confident young woman, unafraid to speak her truth and advocate for change. Together, they founded a foundation aimed at providing resources and training for teenagers to navigate dangerous situations safely. The organization quickly gained traction, attracting partnerships with local law enforcement agencies and schools eager to implement its programs nationwide. Meanwhile, Marcus remained incarcerated, serving out his sentence without much public attention. His case sparked debates about criminal justice reform, prompting lawmakers to revisit policies surrounding rehabilitation and reintegration for former inmates. Some argued that addressing systemic issues like poverty and lack of education could prevent individuals like Marcus from resorting to crime in the first place. Others pointed to the importance of accountability, ensuring victims felt heard and protected under the law. As months turned into years, the story of the subway rescue continued to inspire new generations. Documentaries and interviews revisited the incident, showcasing how a single act of bravery could spark widespread change. Teachers used Mia's journey as an example in classrooms, encouraging students to think critically about empathy, responsibility, and standing up for what is right. Dwayne rarely spoke publicly about the event, preferring to let his actions speak for themselves. However, when asked during occasional interviews, he always emphasized the same message. Heroes aren't born, they're made when ordinary people choose to care. If we all commit to looking out for one another, imagine the kind of world we can create. And so, the ripple effects of that morning on the subway stretched far beyond the confines of a crowded train car. They reminded humanity of its capacity for compassion, courage, and connection, even in moments of fear and uncertainty. Whether through Mia's advocacy, Dwayne's humility, or the countless stories inspired by their encounter, the legacy of that day lived on, proving that true strength lies not in physical power, but in the willingness to protect and uplift those around us. Sometimes, heroes don't wear capes, they ride subways, blend into crowds, and remind us that even the smallest acts of courage can leave lasting ripples of change. And sometimes, those ripples grow into waves, carrying hope and inspiration to corners of the world we never imagined reaching. End.